Have you ever been watching Star Trek and wished you had one of those universal translators? You know, something that could just understand any language instantly? Well, guess what? That sci-fi dream, it's not really science fiction anymore. It's real, and it's probably in your pocket right now.
So, that leads us to the big question we're going to tackle. With AI translation moving this fast, are we actually on the verge of a world where language barriers just melt away, where we can all just understand each other effortlessly?
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll confirm that yes, this tech is really here. Then we'll pop the hood and see how it works. There are two main ways. We'll get into the biggest challenges, speed and accuracy. Then we'll look at where you can use it today. And finally, we'll zoom out and think about what this means for the future of language itself.
All right, part one. The universal translator is here. And I mean that literally. This has officially made the leap from sci-fi movies straight to your smartphone. This isn't a prediction, it's happening right now.
You know, what's really fascinating here is the fundamental change in how this works. The old way was this whole complicated dance, right? You'd listen to something, maybe type it into an app, read the translation, think of a reply, type that out, and then speak. The new goal is to just slice all of that away, to go directly from hearing something in one language to speaking it in another. That's the core idea to keep in mind.
So how does this magic trick actually work? Let's get into part two. We're going to look under the hood at the two main blueprints, the two main approaches that engineers are using to build these things. First up is what we'll call the classic method, or the pipeline. The best way to think about this is like a relay race, with three different AIs passing a baton to each other. It's been the go-to approach for years. So here's how that relay race plays out. The first AI, that's ASR, listens to your voice and just turns it into text. It passes that text like a baton to the second AI, MT, which translates the text into the new language. Then it passes that final text to the third AI, TTS, which reads it out loud in a synthetic voice. See? 3 separate handoffs.
Now, the upside of doing it this way is that it's pretty easy to manage. If you get a better speech recognition model, you can just swap it in. And if something breaks, you can check the text in the middle and see where it went wrong. But, and this is a big but, it has two major downsides: speed and style. Every single handoff adds a little bit of delay, or latency. And maybe more importantly, when you turn speech into plain text, you strip out all the good stuff: the emotion, the tone, the rhythm of how someone actually talks. It just gets flattened.
And that brings us to the challenger, the end-to-end model. This is that simple listen-to-speak idea we talked about put into practice. It's one big, complex AI that's trained to do the whole job at once. It takes audio in one language and spits out audio in another, completely skipping that text middleman.
So let's put them side by side, because this really shows you the trade-offs. The classic pipeline is slower, and it sounds less natural, but it's way easier to fix when it messes up. The new end-to-end model, on the other hand, is much faster, and it keeps that human-sounding tone and timing, but it's kind of like a black box. When something goes wrong inside, it's a lot harder for engineers to figure out why.
Which leads us perfectly into part 3, the hurdles. Because for all its incredible power, this technology is definitely not perfect, and the two biggest mountains to climb are speed and accuracy.
Let's start with speed, or what engineers call latency. You can think of this as the invisible boss of real-time translation. Why? Well, because of how we talk to each other. If you have to wait more than a second, maybe 2, for a response, the conversation just feels off. It's awkward. That little pause completely breaks the natural rhythm of a chat.
The good news? We are getting insanely fast. I mean, some of the newest models can have a response time as low as 232 milliseconds. To put that in perspective, the average human blink takes about 300 to 400 milliseconds. So yeah, we're talking faster than the blink of an eye. The potential for a truly seamless conversation is right there.
But here's the thing. Speed means nothing if the accuracy isn't there. This is where things can get really messy, especially with that classic pipeline model. What happens if that very first AI, the one listening to your voice, just makes one tiny mistake?
Let's use a super simple but really high-stakes example. You're trying to clarify a price, a payment. You say very clearly, he'll pay 15, not 50. The only difference is one little sound.
This is what's called an error cascade. So, imagine you're in a noisy room. That first AI for speech recognition mishears you. It writes down 50. Then, the second AI, the translator, it has no idea that's wrong. It just does its job and translates 50. And finally, the third AI confidently says the totally wrong price out loud.
One tiny error at the very beginning snowballs into a huge mistake at the end. Okay, so keeping those challenges in mind, let's move to part 4. Where can you actually use this technology today? Well, the short answer is pretty much everywhere. On your smartphone, this is quickly becoming a built-in feature. You're seeing it on phones like the Google Pixel and the iPhone for live call translation. What's really key here is that a lot of this is being processed right on the device itself, which makes it faster and way more private because your conversation doesn't have to be sent up to the cloud.
And it's not just on your phone's screen, it's in your ears. Apple's AirPods, for example, can feed a translated conversation right into your ear while you're talking to someone face-to-face. It's an amazing tool for travelers, for sure. It is worth noting, though, that this feature is currently restricted in the European Union.
And this isn't just for personal chats. In the professional world, this is a total game changer. Zoom is already doing translated captions and is starting to add real-time voice translation. Microsoft and Windows are building these tools right into their systems, which means any video call, any online lecture, any meeting can become instantly more accessible to everyone.
All right, for our last section, let's zoom all the way out and talk about the big picture here. What does all this mean for the future of language?
One of the key decisions you'll see in these products is the trade-off between on-device and cloud processing. Basically, on-device is going to be faster, more private, and it'll work even when you're offline. But the cloud can support way more languages and handle more difficult translations. A lot of new systems are actually becoming hybrids, trying to give you the best of both worlds.
So, if you're going to start using this technology, here are 4 golden rules to get the best results. First, speak in short, clear sentences. Don't ramble. Second, always double-check critical info like prices, dates, or names. Third, if you're traveling, download the languages you need beforehand so it works offline. And fourth, and this is the most important one, for anything really high stakes, like a medical diagnosis or a legal contract, please use a professional human interpreter.
Which brings us right back to where we started. So are language barriers really about to disappear? Well, they're definitely shrinking. I mean, for everyday, low-stakes conversations, those barriers are lower than they have ever been in human history. But for the tricky stuff, for nuance, for culture, for humor, and especially for that high-stakes accuracy, the human element is still absolutely irreplaceable. The barriers are getting smaller for sure, but the need for us to be careful, clear communicators, that's not going anywhere.